We're going to go ahead and call the June Public Safety Committee to order, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of last month.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
And a second. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. If it's okay with the committee, I've had a request to move the sheriff's department up to first tonight. I think they gotta go somewhere. And so if I don't hear any objection, we'll go ahead and come on up, Roger. I think basically all they've got tonight is their report. Is there anything out of, I mean, this year is June, it's kind
It's
of,
just
It's
about all
end of the
zero,
year,
isn't
yeah.
it?
Yeah.
right, it is what it is. Is there,
Makes it simpler.
yeah, is there any questions for Virgil?
Before he takes off, I have a question, but not on this.
Okay. Is there a question on the report?
Give us a minute to look at it.
Just need to look at it.
Yeah.
Whenever you all are ready, I will entertain a motion.
Just all those things. Okay.
I move that we approve the report as presented.
Got a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Our discussion.
Looks like water's way up.
I'm sorry.
The water.
It's just the way it goes this time of year. You got people taking showers according to the number of prisoners there is, you know, those type of issues that come with it.
You see it.
And we're back up in numbers on prisoners again. Over 800. We were down to 600, so that's going to be quite a bit more water consumption on that.
Yeah, but it said in the past, meter will either be repaired or replaced.
So maybe we weren't getting charged now.
So, yeah.
We're
That's
at
happened before.
That's right there.
1, 2, 3, about $4,000 over the last 3 years.
Anybody else?
They got the garden out too, remember?
True.
If there's no other discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. You have something, Commissioner?
Well, I just want to mention, you already said you were coming to budget Wednesday.
Yes,
Do you have any of that information? What, just for this committee, we had some questions at the public hearing, and one of the questions was the cost of the uniforms and the dry cleaning.
Yes, sir.
And they're going to bring a report back to budget. And I thought y'all would be interested in knowing that was one of the things from the public hearing, so.
Yeah, we're working on that right now. We're going to finish up on it tomorrow, but I mean, it's in black and white. I mean, it can be, everything can be laid out, explained to dollar amounts. The type of uniforms, you know, one thing I believe from listening from the meeting the other night, there's some misinformation that come out from, I guess, another opponent or something about Class A's costing $1,600. They're a little bit over $500 actually. And those are used for special ceremonies, funerals, or Police Memorial Day, you know, those type of events. Is what those are.
Everybody out there doesn't have a Class A uniform.
No, just the command staff, and that was bought out of the Narcotics Fund. Also, the Honor Guard was bought out of the Narcotics Fund, and those are a little bit over $700 because they have to be special fitted, and these are the guys that do, again, funerals, ceremonies, you know, those type of things. It's just a way for us to look more professional. We've had honor guards for probably 10 years or more, for instance. And so we're just kind of evolving into that realm, and it's with, you know, everything's within the budget other than what we bought out of the Narcotics Fund.
You know, any law enforcement or public safety entity, whether it be fire, police, or EMS, they've got an honor guard.
Yes, sir.
You know, and it's that way in every municipality in every county, just about, that I know of.
Yeah. And I'll hit a pretext here is that something that happened about 4 years ago, might have been 4.5 years ago, we got in a lawsuit. One of our SROs got in a lawsuit over of inadequate identification. The federal judge told us that we needed to come up with a better uniform plan. And that was one of the things that kind of curved us that direction. We had a SRO that basically there was a situation at a basketball game, and he basically had taken this person into custody, and she basically resisted, and her lawsuit was the fact she couldn't identify who he was. That's one reason we basically went to the vest outside the Stars, and just about every division dresses in the same uniform right now. The green dab 511s, which whenever we go to budget, you'll see that those are a better uniform, cheaper, but we're getting away from the SROs, what they're wearing this year. Next year, they'll be going the same copy uniform, away from the polo shirts, khaki pants. Detention's wearing the same 511 greens. Patrol does. Your ICE units, all of those are in the same uniform now. We used to have 3 or 4 different sets of uniforms for whatever you were doing. And other than your special units, your SWAT teams, your boat patrol, horse unit, there's a little bit of cost in some of those. And a lot of the cost on the SWAT team as far as equipment and stuff comes out of narcotics fund on that. But I just want to give you a little pre-hit, and then Wednesday night we'll get deeper into it.
What was the argument on the dry cleaning?
Well, they were saying that, I think it was 40,000.
43.
58.
Agree that,
for
yeah.
dry cleaning, and we cut, and that's not really true. I mean, when we started initially looking into it, it's less than, we
It's
had
like
cut it some
34.
too. So.
It's down to 34, and of course the logical on that is that it prolongs the life of the uniforms. Let me put it this way: you send uniforms into 50 households, you have 50 ways they get washed. If you use wrong detergent, it will affect the fabric on that material, fade them, and a lot of times, I'm just going to say this with a pun, is that most wives don't like ironing those uniforms.
It also keeps the officers from taking the contaminants
That's
from the job home.
and
which is,
that's a big reason
I
we
know
got documented.
where I work, we've had dry cleaning and you can attest to that for a long time, and the police department does. That's just kind of business as usual for.
And that's very correct. That's one thing, even myself, when I was on the street, I've never washed my clothes when I washed them back in the day with my family's clothes. I mean, that's just, as a no-no.
It's just patrol that does dry cleaning, right?
They're the main ones, being that they're in the field. We allow a few people, according to what they're doing, the evidence room tech, the 2 people that's in there, being that they deal with blood pathogen and those things, we allow them to get some of their stuff cleaned.
I don't have any more questions.
Yes, sir.
Unless y'all do. So.
Just maybe a quick follow-up, but the meeting out at the Sheriff's Department, when the budget was presented, there was a number of questions out of the committee about the salary structure, what has come of that, and where are we with that? Maybe the mayor can answer it, or...
Well, I think, the mayor and the sheriff, as far as I know, the sheriff's accepted the mayor's recommendations this time. I think there's still some discussion going on certain positions of concern, but I could not really respond to the.
We didn't make any of those changes.
Okay.
Stay within the same structure that
Okay.
we currently have in place.
Okay.
The same one
Thank
as
you.
everybody else in just about in county general, wasn't it?
Yeah, everywhere, everyone's still within the same structure. We haven't changed that process.
And just the other thing, there was a lot of discussion, and maybe it's mostly me, you guys, about SROs. Those SROs that are working at those small schools, what do they do in the summer?
Well, if they built their comp hours up, they're taking off. If they haven't, then we assign them to different other locations like state and civil warrants, the street. So they put their time in.
Okay, so
That's kind of that's how it's always been. That kind of how.
I just wanted to make sure that they were being used, especially as reducing overtime and those kinds of things, or
Absolutely.
getting other people's vacation time in.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Most of them work ball games and other, do.
Not at those K through 5 schools, though. They just don't.
No, not
Yeah, well, sometimes they have to bring
They
them to
do
like a
the
high school game,
high
fill in
school
enough
games
staff
and-
personnel.
No, I don't disagree with any of
Yeah.
that, but
And they build up their comp time that way, and so they take off for the summer.
But still, the ones that don't have the full time in, because they put a lot of time in with the students. But in this case, like you're talking about the lower schools, they come in and we assign them, and it's good training for them to get back on the street. So we use them a lot of different places.
I couldn't agree with you more, so
And,
thank you.
and there's other training they go to in the summer because
But once,
You're not
yes,
at
and
the
that's
school,
kind of
then-
that's one of the things that come up before on the budget. was at a certain point, some of their schools don't come up to after the budget. Sometimes they're just before, so that's why sometimes it kind of winds down to that point because they're in school and they can't go to these schools.
That's when they get their 40-hour in service.
Yes, sir. That is correct. And then we may have a new SRO or two that has to go through training, through attrition or movement or whatever.
Anything else? I say, we don't approve, okay. Anything else? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Deputy Chief Gammon didn't know he was gonna get grilled tonight, did he?
I'm used to it.
All
Have a good night.
You too. Next, emergency management, and I think the director is on vacation this week. If you'll look over that, and whenever you're ready, I'll take a motion. I think they worked the air show was quite a bit of stuff.
Well, I was wondering how the communications went at the air show, and we don't have anybody here to tell us about that, do we?
Not to my knowledge.
We can find out next month.
Right.
Not much there, but I move to approve.
All right, motion to approve, is there a second?
How do I flip this?
Second.
And a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion has carried. Next is the OSHA report. How are you doing?
Good evening. Doing well, thank you.
Did he just have an accident there?
What's that?
Did he just have an accident there?
Yeah, I think you tripped me.
My paper slipped up my hand.
A near miss.
Like to report for the month of May that we had a total of 16 injuries requiring medical attention. From your report there, you can see how those broke down. That brings us to the year to date to a total of 88. Of those 88, 45 of them were OSHA recordable. 31 of them had restricted days, 10 lost time days, and 4 others. On the next page, you'll see how that compares with this year, with previous years, and how we rank compared to last year. We had 73 at this time, and the year before we had 85, so a little bit higher, but about running average this time of year. The net dollars incurred for last month was $18,070. The Board of Education had 13 injuries, and their total dollars incurred were $12,170. And the county had the remaining 3 injuries, and the total dollars incurred there were $5,900. And then if you turn on over, you'll see where the Sheriff's Department had all 3 of those injuries in the county area. And then the last page of that report is the dollars incurred, and you'll notice that right now this year at $135,000, we're quite a bit less than we were this time last year at $149,000, and then again in 2012, those had all matured, but at this time in 2012 we had $256,000 in injuries, the dollars incurred for the injuries.
Yeah, but right now, as opposed to 2012, we're almost completely OJI now, as opposed to OJI and workman's comp. Correct?
Well, OJI came in 2009,
Yeah.
so yeah, all those injuries in 2012 were OJI injuries.
Okay.
And of course, like I said, in 2012, those injuries have all closed out, so we know what the final dollar amount is on all of those in 2012. Right now, we believe that we're going to be about $135,000 with total dollars incurred so far. Of course, these are not matured injuries, so if somebody had a knee sprain or something, and lo and behold, they go get an MRI and turns out they've got a torn ligament or something, then that's what causes it to go up.
Mm-hmm.
But those have not matured. But at this time, we look to be about half of what we were 2 years ago.
Make a motion to approve the report.
I've got a motion, do we have a second? And a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
In the last meeting, I informed you that Tennessee OSHA paid a visit to us, and the next report you have attached to the OSHA is their report or their that they sent in. You'll notice from the cover page there that they saw Animal Services or PAWS and the county maintenance. There were a total of 4 citations listed in the report. 3 of them were in the maintenance department, and 1 was in PAWS or Animal Services. The 3 in the maintenance department, as you look through the report, you're going to see that citation 1 or item 1 and 3 under maintenance actually dealt with the same thing. Maintenance over a workbench that they had in the shop had coming down from the ceiling and a flexible cable or a flexible electrical cable, and they actually attached a box to it so that they had power that would come to the table. And that actually got 2 citations. 1 because it was flexible. They cannot have a flexible cable hanging from the ceiling because it needs to be in conduit. And then the box that they had on the bottom of the cable, because it was flexible, was not the appropriate box. So you get 2 citations for the same thing. That cable has since been removed, and therefore the box is no longer there either. So now that it's been removed, the citation's been corrected. The other thing is in their main electrical panel in the room, one of the openings or switches had an opening in it. Instead of having a spacer put in the opening, it was just left open, and so they have since gotten a spacer put in that. And that's the 3 citations that have been corrected in the maintenance department. In PAWS, they had 1 citation, and if you flip over a couple more pages, you'll see in that. And what that was they had placed something in front of an electrical panel in a closet. Somebody had opened the door, the electrical panel there, and somebody just set a box in front of it. That box has been removed. It was removed at the time of the inspection, and a sign has been placed there not to put anything in front of the electrical panel. And it's also been locked so that electrical panel just doesn't have easy access for anybody to come in and open it up and get to it. But that's one of the citations that you see quite often, just like fire extinguishers, where you're not allowed to put anything within 3 feet of a fire extinguisher and block it. Somebody will come in and set something down in front of a fire extinguisher, and you're constantly trying to keep people from putting things in front of it. And what that does is get back to training, making sure people understand that they can't put things there in front of a fire extinguisher. And I'm sure everybody thinks it's only going to sit there for a minute, but that's still a citational fact that somebody comes in and spots it. So, but it was a very good inspection. I think it had good results, and everything's been corrected, and we'll be having that sent out this week to Tennessee OSHA and respond to that.
Any fines?
No fines to a public entity because it would come out of the tax dollars.
Yeah.
So we have to correct all our citations.
Question. On the one for PAWS, it says inspection site is 606 East Burton.
Yeah, that's true. They have a problem up there getting us all correct.
Okay.
But it was PAWS. And also another thing that I have problems with, the county is the Honorable Mayor Burgess, it's mayor of the city of Murfreesboro, and it's cited on the cover page too, but
It's state government, isn't it?
I would rather say that's state, that's not county. We do a little bit better. Yes, sir.
Okay.
We don't do it.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
It seems to me that it might be a violation to lock the door so you don't have access to this panel. What about that, Gary?
Locking like
Electrical panel up so you can't get access if you've got a
No.
short, in a line?
Yeah,
Okay.
you
As long
know.
as we're fine there,
Yeah.
I'm just,
Okay, we'll make sure that gets addressed.
I mean, you've already addressed it, but I mean,
Yeah. It seemed like, I remember we discussed it. I thought that it said it locked it, but you are correct. Come to think of it, it probably should not be locked because it needs to be accessed to the electric panels.
I mean, I'd want access to it. I mean, if
Yeah.
you had something
Right.
start arcing out and you couldn't get to it, could cause a problem.
You are correct.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Let's see. Well, we got a motion.
We're already done it.
We got a motion.
Well, he just was doing the TOSHA report then.
Okay, so
That
we
was
don't
just
need-
for
okay.
information.
All right. Is that it?
That's it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, next is the Correctional Work Center report. Welcome.
How y'all doing?
Good, you doing all right?
Good.
Start off with the minutes from the June 2nd board meeting. For expenditures for budget, everything was looking good. Told the board about the budget amendment we did to have enough sufficient funds to last us for a clerical position to the end of this month. Informed them about the CAD Corps starting a volunteer program to start a MRT program for the inmates. Informed them about a prayer breakfast that we did on June 11th. And also a partnership with the domestic violence program where some of our female offenders will be going there to do some housekeeping, helping them with that. Next was the state litter pickup for the month of June, was $2,566.81. Yearly activity report, pretty much our average monthly census, April was 141. Show our felony days and misdemeanor days. Average in it for March and April, 74 and 73. Released 82 in March.
So the head count average is down.
Yes. But we're still getting daily transfers. It's just a matter of working it. As far as medical clearance with some of these individuals is what sometimes holds up some of that. But I can say we're still getting intakes on a daily basis. Workout average, March was 62, April 60. GD program, they were scheduled to take the high test, but we're working out with the high test governing agency to make sure we have a site that's actually sanctioned to do the testing, so that's still in the works. And pretty much that's the highlight of that report. The work release program, month of May, we had 2 inmates hired full-time at Presco Tech, 1 inmate hired full-time at Metalmax, 1 inmate hired full-time at Interlap, so the program is still going great. I think we have 13 this month also in the program, and I can tell you, every month we're still always looking for more potential employees for this program. So,
What do we, and refresh my memory, and I probably should know this, but I don't. What do we do for those companies that get involved in that program, and how do we acknowledge them, and as far as appreciation?
Like an incentive for it, pretty much it's just a partnership. It's a win-win on both sides.
I know, but how do we acknowledge that? Let's say XYZ business is involved in working our inmates in the program, and then they'll turn around and help them when they get out, how to be a better citizen.
Right. Like
How
a
we-
press release, if you just acknowledge them or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, how are we acknowledging them to let them know that this business is actually stepping forward?
Right. We'll have to, make sure they're okay with it,
Right.
because as long as they're okay with it, I don't have a problem, mentioning it, like I do it to the board, but, if we can make it broader to expand that information, that would be fine, but I just want to make sure it's okay with them before
Right. I mean, it's a good program, and it helps the inmate be able to be a better person once they get out and being incarcerated. And I just wonder some way we can acknowledge and show
I agree.
appreciation to the business.
We'll reach out to them and, tell them that it was mentioned here, public safety, and if they didn't have a problem with it, we could find a way to.
Hopefully soon we'll have a program, I think the HR is working on it, where we'll formally recognize those participating organizations with a certificate of appreciation from the mayor.
Well, good, yeah. That's kind of where I'm heading with the question, yeah.
That'll work. That'd be great. Alrighty. The worker report, which reflects work crews going up March. As far as savings to the county and the townships, total was 129,600. April was 135,360. May 139,520,000, and that pretty much covers the report.
Any questions on the report?
Motion to approve.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
And a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. You got a budget amendment?
This amendment was needed to provide sufficient funds to purchase an oven for the work center. The previous one was beyond repair. We did a lot of patching and calling one of our vendors that does the repairs for the food service equipment, and it just got to the point where it was just better to just buy a new one instead of keep repairing it. And so we needed from line 336 $4,870 and put it into line 790 other equipment to be sufficient funds to make this happen.
You've heard the request, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
And a second, discussion. Hearing or seeing none, call the roll.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Jeff Phillips?
Aye.
Commissioner Tiffany Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Commissioner Farley?
Yes. Is that it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Juvenile detention. Welcome.
Good evening.
How you doing?
Great. Before you, you have our monthly report for May, followed by our facility programming for the month of May, and the agency totals for different charges, and then the counties that we contract and their totals. And there's nothing that stands out in any of these reports, but I will happily answer any questions that you have.
Any questions on the report?
How much did you collect from the counties last year? Do you know off the top of your head, roughly? Is it about the same?
Yeah,
or-
we're tracking about the same. It's of course we have had the state contract about midway through the year. So if you include that, of course we're more, but the counties are tracking about the same.
Anything else? Entertain a motion when you're ready.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
And a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Is that it?
That's it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the drug court report. I don't see her here. If you look over it, and we'll entertain a motion whenever you're ready. I'm assuming everything's in status quo.
I don't know that report, what data is on there is just for the month of September, so
Yeah.
we get that, so I think we probably should just pass
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah. All right. Paul's report. Good evening.
For the month of May, we had 597 animals that came into the shelter. 30% of those came from the county jurisdictions, 10.9% came from the city of Laverne, 44.9% came from the city of Murfreesboro, and 14.2% came from the town of Smyrna. And you can see at the bottom with our outcomes, we had 145 animals that were adopted, 314 animals were euthanized, 88 animals were reclaimed by their owner, 6 animals were deceased, and 46 had other outcomes. That gave us a total outcomes of 599. Our adoption reclaim percentage was 38.9% for the month, and our euthanasia rate was 52.4%. When you take in animals that could be released, such as wildlife, our overall shelter live release rate was 45.4%. Out of the animals that were reclaimed, 37 of those were from our surgery programs. At the end of the month, we had 98 animals that remained in the shelter. We had 2,242 people that visited the shelter looking for a new or lost pet, and we had 2,151 logged calls and voicemails. 1,665 calls were received, 1,684 calls were completed. You can see the breakdown of those by jurisdictions as well. And we traveled 11,565 miles. Year to date, we've had 6,946 animals come into the shelter. Our overall live release rate for the fiscal year is 46.0%. We've had almost 21,000 people visit the shelter and had 22,502 logged calls and voicemails. Call volume, we've had 16,821 calls that were received and 16,865 calls that were completed. And we've traveled 126,638 miles. On the bite report side, we've had 37 bites that were reported for the month of May. One of those animals was sent for testing, which was negative. We had 7 other exposures reported. 2 of those animals were tested. One of those came back as positive. That was a skunk. It was involved with contact with those other folks' animals. We've had, I think, 2 thus far this month. We had one Friday that tested positive again. They've all been skunks, and pretty much all the same as far as contact. Did work with OIT, and they do have a slide up on the Channel 19 indicating to get your animals vaccinated against rabies, which is state law. Thankfully, most of the folks have had their animals current, so it completely altered how the plans were on the course of action. That's the report.
Any questions on the report? Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve report.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
And a second, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion is carried. You got a budget amendment?
Yes, sir. What we're asking to do is move money around within our budget to be able to finish out the year with overtime and gasoline. Finance worked today on making sure that the amounts were adequate there for the overtime and whatnot. The gasoline we amended back a couple of months ago. We're going to be just a little bit short on being able to pay the bill for June.
You've heard the request, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Got a motion, and then is there a second?
Second.
And a second, discussion?
On the overtime,
Yes, sir.
is that caused by not having enough employees in place for the number that you're allowed?
Well,
Or is that just extra duties?
it's multiple things. A lot of our overtime goes for our officers that are on call overnight. We never know what type of emergencies they're going to be handling. Our numbers are down right now. We've got 2 folks in training, so that is forcing the officers to be on call more, plus having to work harder during the daytime. This month, what's hurt us a little bit is all of that coupled with we had 2 different trainings that we needed to get some of the newer folks to. By doing that, the only way we could work it out was those folks had to work 6 days, so we automatically had to pay them overtime for that 6th day to be able to make that happen staffing wise.
Well, I don't normally see a lot of overtime costs with
Right.
departments. Why it kind of caught me by surprise. So.
I mean, as the population's growing, we've got some folks that get an on-call that they don't have any calls. I know we had a gentleman last week that was on call. He worked his regular 8-hour shift, picked up on call at 7 o'clock, and I think he got home at 3 o'clock in the morning. So he worked basically a double shift, 8 hours of that being a time and a half. We just don't know when the calls are going to come in and what has to be ran and what doesn't.
How many people have you hired this year? I'm talking fiscal year from July 1st last year, roughly. Tony?
Are you asking just specific officer-wise or the entire department?
Entire department.
I wouldn't be able to give you an accurate number on that.
An estimate?
Just because the part-timers come and go.
Well, I mean, okay, well, I'm looking at full-time. All right.
Full-time folks, since fiscal year, I'm going to say, and this is purely pulling from memory, I'm going to say approximately 6 or so.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you haven't had that many attendants leave?
We've had one leave recently, well, 2 to 3, but we replaced those right back.
I don't know, I was just,
Yeah.
in my mind, I thought there would be a fair amount of turnover in that. That's what.
For the most part, the staff that we've got now, there's not near as much turnover as there was. I mean, there is still some. Now, if you had started asking me part-time or what, I wouldn't be able to answer that because we're talking $8 an hour part-time.
Yeah, but they
A lot
find
of
something better or
college
whatever.
kids and whatnot counts through that, so I wouldn't be able to give you an accurate number there.
Any other questions? Hearing none, or seeing none, call roll.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Jeff Phillips?
Aye.
Commissioner Tiffany Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Commissioner Farley?
Yes.
I do have one thing, this may be a housekeeping that I don't remember if we did this or not. Every year we apply for the animal-friendly license plate grant through the state. Actually, we just wrapped up the one for this year today, mailing out the report. They just sent this. They did increase the amount to $3,900 for next year. I'd like to see if we could go ahead and get that approved so we can get the mayor to be able to sign everything and get it back. Last year, even though we got it back, we didn't actually get the go-ahead until I think it was the middle of March to start. So I want to try to get this process going much sooner this time. It was kind of crunch time there at the end with our vet staff. What we did previous, we had always brought in the space station to do these surgeries. They had to increase their cost since we already have the vet staff there in the facility. We can do the surgeries much cheaper and get more surgeries for the money than bringing the space station in. So that's what we'd like to do. This will fund about 122 surgeries.
100% grant.
Yes, Polk County money.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve the putting in for it and any needed signatures that could go along with it.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Michael, can I get a copy of your grant?
Ambulance service.
Gets one first.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
How you doing, Mike? I'm wonderful.
This goes to budget, doesn't it, Mayor? That goes to budget, doesn't it?
Whenever you're ready.
We made 2,333 calls last month. Average response time was 7.9 minutes, and we had 33 coroner's calls. And there was 12 autopsies done last month. We billed $1,399,293 and collected $589.82. Actual collections to date is $5,868,661. And then we're projecting 6.4, a little bit over. We had 435,378 of insurance write-offs. Collection agency write-offs 241.92. At the table on the bottom of the page, we drove a total of 44,856 miles. Spent a total of $26,964 in operating costs and $20,672 in fuel costs. And we made 696 calls out of zone. Next page is a listing of in-services and training. As you can see, we had a fairly busy month in all those areas. The react and event standbys this time of the year are very busy anyway, so we had 21 of those and 7 trainings in the SORT special operations. Next page is each ambulance station and its average response time and time on the scene, transport times, so forth.
Your response time, how is that figured?
It's just
Is it from the time they're dispatched, or is it from the time they check in route?
From the time they're dispatched.
Okay, so that is included in the time they dispatch to the time they arrive on scene. Okay, that's, some organizations do it different, and I wanted to know. That's a good response time from the time you're dispatched for a lot of areas.
Next page is the monthly calls broken down by commissioner districts, as well as Nashville calls and their transport team calls. Transport team made a total of 145 calls, 64 critical transports, and 81 911 calls. Following page is same information year to date. And then the next page is a matrix where you can see where the out-of-zone calls happened and who answered them, as well as the total number of calls within the zone. So that's a little bit better tool than the other one is. And the last page just has to do with the people who asked to be off and were denied the opportunity to be off. 998 hours. And the last page is how many hours that we had people off for vacation, sick time, FMLA, and so forth. That's it.
Any questions on the report? Hearing or seeing none. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the report.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
And a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. You got something else on here?
I don't have a copy of it, but I think you do. I do now. This is an agreement between Rutherford County and the City of Murfreesboro. It has to do with the city's first responder program. We had a similar agreement to this. It was dated in 2002. And so this is just a revised agreement. There's not a lot of difference in it. The types of calls are the same. The biggest difference is the people who are EMTs with the City of Murfreesboro or paramedics with the City of Murfreesboro can work within their scope of practice as long as they have been credentialized through us. Our medical director has agreed to do that. So.
How are they getting, they gotta go through a class to get credentialized?
Yeah, we teach the class and do the testing. It's the same program that our medics go through once a year, just in case you have to go.
Are you the only one that can certify them on that, or can they go to some other
No, we're the only ones.
certifiable?
This doesn't have anything to do with certification. It just has to do with being credentialed. I guess the best example is that if you go to court and the lawyer asks you if the medic can do something and you say yes, they can do it, then the next question is going to be, how do you know they can do it? And we can say they've been through we call it our skills fair. And
What's the difference between what they're going to be running now and what they're currently running as far as their training, or what they're going to be able to do as far as protocols? Because I know at the county fire department, they can use glucometers and pulse oxes now, and they didn't go through this credentialing program that you're making the city go through.
I don't think the glucometer is part of that. I think we're basically talking about IVs and.
So the city's going to be able to give IVs?
If they're qualified to do it.
That's not the information I was given. I was told they weren't going to be able to give IVs.
You heard it out of the man's mouth right here.
So it's in here too.
Well, I mean, are they going to be allowed to push D50, epi?
As long as they've been.
I mean, I can give D50 to my cow, so.
As long as they have been credentialed to do that, and most of them now have been. Most of them have completed that class.
Well, I'd say 90% of them, they sat through Randy's class over at MTSU. So I mean, how many times can you get credentialed by the same person 8 times? It's a little overkill.
Well, some of those guys went through that test in 10, 15 years ago too.
It's not overkill. We do ours every year.
Well, I just want to make sure that they can practice their licensure. I mean, I was taught how to use a combi tube in my first responder class back 10 years ago, and that's a first responder level skill, and we've never been able to do that as a first responder. And that's according to the state, that's a skill that I was taught in class, and it is a first responder skill, and it's, you know, if that's going to save somebody's life and we can do that, we should be doing that. We shouldn't be, you know, it's about patient care. If we're going through the same credentialing process, we need to make sure, and not just Murfreesboro, but if Laverne, you know, they've got 2 guys that know EMS very well down there at their fire department. I'm sure they're probably chomping at the bit to move forward. I don't want them, their hands tied either. You know, if they've got the people that are qualified and trained, I want them
If we're gonna be
to move forward.
responsible for them, they're gonna have to be credentialized by us, and that's the bottom line.
One other, and it kind of does pertain to this contract and because of dispatch. And I was listening the other day, and I was listening to that tanker rollover. And the same thing happened to Murfreesboro about 7 or 8 years ago. We had a firefighter declare Mayday. And our dispatch dispatches a first responder call over top of that firefighter declaring a Mayday. Well, you had a major emergency out there. Supervisors, ambulances, lifeline. Hold up, this goes with this.
Ain't got nothing to do
Yes,
with
it does. Let me finish into this.
All right.
With dispatch, y'all operate off one channel. When you bring in all these first responder agencies off one channel, you all are overwhelmed on dispatch because a medical call was dispatched over a critical call, and I'd like to see something, and I've always argued about dispatch, and that if a city's dispatch is going to notify you that we're there en route and they're on the scene, why tie up your dispatch and have that company contact y'all on your channel? Because all that's doing is making it harder on your dispatch. You already know they're en route. I mean, maybe just have them check on scene and give an update versus checking en route, clear the scene, all this, that. I mean, if they're talking to their dispatch, there's no need in y'all talking to that company too, because so much y'all can be overwhelmed so quick, and then another call needs to be dispatched out, and then you have an engine from Laverne or Smyrna or Murfreesboro trying to say en route to wherever for a foot pain or chest pain or doesn't matter. I mean, but it's over an MVA where LifeLight could be involved, and it's just tying it up. And something needs to be done about that.
We have the capability of switching to 2 or 3 different networks, but you're talking about Joe Gurley's bailiwick there. You know, he's.
I know what he wants. One dispatch.
That's not ever going to happen, but I agree with it.
Don't say never.
We're getting closer.
You said Murfreesboro would never do BLS either, and this is the contract. So
I didn't ever say that.
I heard it from you.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
You absolutely did not hear that from me.
Heard it from you right out there one day.
All right, look here, hold on just a minute. All right. We need to get some, look, just chill.
I don't like being called a liar.
Well, just chill. All right, we need to change on here, Tommy Bragg, and to change it to the new mayor would be something we want to change on there. All right. So basically what you're saying is the EMTs and paramedics can actually do the things in this protocol, this agreement, that they were not able to do previously.
Previously, they could respond as first responders.
Right, okay. All right.
I've got one more question. What if the cities want to move forward into ALS? What are we going to do then?
We're going to cross that bridge when we get there. We've spent a few months on this.
Because I mean that's the
With
next
all
step,
of
and I see
all of the
you know
leadership team over there, starting with the mayor and
not Murfreesboro, all municipalities, if they want to, they have their rights.
You
to,
said ALS. This is BLS.
I understand that. I'm asking, what if a city is willing to go to the next step? What's our?
We will thoughtfully entertain any discussion that they bring forward at the appropriate time. And say what we're going to do because we don't know the attendant circumstances.
They got to BLS, they got to work through this process first before they can go to ALS. You know, wouldn't you think?
It wouldn't take long to get there.
But you would think that you would want to go through the BLS first before you jump to the ALS.
I look at what other municipalities do.
But you got to crawl before you can walk, Matt. I mean,
It's up to you.
You've got people that are trained
in the city of Murfreesboro to initiate their thought process.
Like I said, I'm not talking just about the city, I'm talking about other cities. If they've got competent people and willing to play, and that's what their goals and initiatives are, I think we should allow them to move forward with the credentialing process. I've never said that shouldn't be a part of it, but I just don't want to hamstring a city where they can't do something and they do meet the qualifications. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think it's hamstringing here. I think this here is moving.
Just want to make sure that
towards
if they
something.
choose to move forward, they can.
I think you just want to argue up here tonight, to go my personal opinion.
Every first responder unit in this county has a similar agreement as this.
Right. And any first responder program that wants to move to the next level can do what Murfreesboro just did and move to that next level. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
If they want to move to the ALS, they can do the same process and go through the same process and go to that. Is that correct?
Right.
Sound like the plan. It sound like it's everything's in
I
place.
just heard him say that's correct, because I mean, to me, moving forward to ALS is the exact same thing, pretty much the same agreement, except you just get trained to the higher protocols. I mean, I don't think that much would be different. There'd be a little bit more because of drugs and narcotics and whatnot, but it wouldn't be that much more different.
Going off of past experience, from what I know, been gone 3 years up there. I don't think there's enough people up there to the paramedic level to be able to go and staff an ALS unit 24/7.
You've been gone for quite a while now, and things have changed. More people have gotten educated and trained.
All right, we're gonna move on. And you got the agreement on the floor here. And do we have a motion? Is there a motion to this effect?
Motion to approve the agreement.
Got a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. All right.
And that also will allow the mayor or whoever we need to sign this agreement.
Yeah.
Make it.
All right. We've all had discussion. And I'm gonna call for the question.
Commissioner P.,
Yes.
Commissioner Jeff Phillips,
Aye.
Commissioner Tiffany Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Farley.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, next is the fire rescue report.
No.
Before you get started, if you would, can you kind of give us an update on the incident that occurred Friday with the, Kipling?
We had a structure fire on Halsey Pike, and dispatch paged out District 17, which is Kittrell, Lascassas, and Station 3 of our department. And as we were responding to the incident, we got informed that the tanker had overturned, and Chief John Engel said he was going to respond to that, and I took over the structure fire and manned it. One of the young men was trapped by his hand. It took about 45 minutes to free him. And from the information that Chief Engel gave me, that they life flighted him. They did CT scans on his hand, his arm. They thought he had major hand and arm damage. But I think after it's all said and done, he had one broken pinky finger. And he's going to have reconstructive surgery on that. So by the grace of God, they're doing well, and we're thankful that none of them was hurt, and that all we lost was apparatus. So it was a curvy road, and for whatever reason, the front wheel dropped off, and he overcorrected, and when it did, it flipped.
It's good that everything worked out the way it did.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea? I know this was not a county truck. This was actually the volunteer department's truck. Do we have any idea of the type of training each one of these departments?
I
As far as
don't.
driver training?
They're required by state law to have EVOC, which is emergency vehicle training every year, and they've been SK. And I can check with Chief Ingles to see if that's in place.
And I'm not just, I'm talking about any of them.
Well, I know
To make sure.
we do it at our department every year. Everybody has to drive every piece of apparatus. We set up at Rock Bell School, set up a course with cones, and they have to drive through that course. Every driver has to drive every unit, and then they have to back through it.
Right.
And so we do that every year. And I would assume, I would hope that the rest of the departments are doing that.
Well, I mean, and that's my point. I mean, we really don't know that they are or not. And they have got county trucks in each one of these departments. I want to make sure that.
Is it possible to set that up for the county department? Is that what you're?
I mean,
volunteering?
you know, anytime we have that class ourselves, we invite anybody who wants to come participate. I mean, that's no problem. Cause I know a lot of people don't have that.
Yeah.
There's a state law, they have to meet all the same training. We meet the same training the county fire department does at Murfreesboro. It doesn't differentiate between paid and volunteer. Where the difference is where I was arguing a couple of months ago is in the pump operator training, actually working the pump. That training is different, but as far as driving, the state law says you have to have this. The ambulance service has to have the same thing. Sheriff's department has to, anybody that drives an emergency vehicle has to have a certain amount of training. That is a law. And all of them have to meet that, or that chief in that department is violating it, and they'll be held accountable if not.
In our contracts that we have with the volunteer, it states now that we can request any kind of documents that we deem necessary, and I can request those.
And it come to mind after this happened, thinking, what if? And that's my reason for this, to make sure that everybody is doing it. Because what I don't want to happen is at some point something happens and occurs, and then next thing you know, that department, or if it's a county vehicle, the county is next thing you know, we've got a liability issue. I just want to be progressive about it and try to find out and make sure that they are, is where I'm headed.
Well, I know the young man that was driving the tanker that day. He's driven it several times before. I've observed him driving that vehicle. He knows what he's doing, and he does a good job. And he's very cautious.
And I'm not saying that they wouldn't. All I'm saying is
I understand.
Could be someone.
We need to make sure that everybody's meeting the standard.
But this is just one example of several things that we're going to identify and know as standards, and we're going to determine who's meeting them and who's not meeting them.
One thing, you know, about these tankers, and I've argued this and you heard it, but we've had 4 tanker rollovers since, I believe, 1990. I believe the first one was Harold Douglas when it was the old Rutherford. He was in there. He told me about that one. Then you had Walter Hill, you had Amaville, and now Kittrell. So that's 4. I mean, I said it wasn't a matter if, it was a matter of when. It doesn't take, that asphalt can give away because these things are so heavy. It's the most dangerous vehicle on the road, and you can have the safest driver and accidents can happen. That's what scares me about them, but you've got to have them.
And we just got to do a better job of oversight and make sure that everybody is meeting standards as far as training and make sure they've got the experience behind them before they get behind the wheel.
Yeah, I'm not actively working with Kittrell now as an active firefighter, but when I left the department, you didn't get behind the wheel in the truck unless you were certified first as a pump operator, secondly as a driver, and you had to pass EVOC training or you still couldn't drive.
Right.
We carry insurance up to $1 million liability insurance on every one of those vehicles.
It's actually $5 million.
Well, like I said, it's been a while since I've been active with them, so, you know, as far as what we're trying to do and what they're keeping in place for records, we don't let people drive those vehicles that aren't certified to do it. And 2, when I first started, most of us were, I forget the licenses, you know, school bus drivers, CDL license, some of them were over the road drivers. So, you know, we were lucky in that aspect that we had some go-to drivers, and those guys taught the rest of us how to drive.
And my point is, I'm not trying to insinuate that someone, all I'm saying is.
I know that, but I wanted to bring that
right.
out, Gary, and I think that we need to check and we need to verify that all these companies are doing just that. Now, one thing else I'll say in this guy's defense, I drove this road in a fire truck, and it's weedy, but not only that, it's narrow, and it's snaky.
Right.
But the worst thing about it is there are no shoulders
right.
on those roads. My kids fuss at me about driving in the middle of the road out in the country, and I said, "Hon, you get one wheel off the edge of this road, and you're in the ditch, and you drove it." And you know that's true in just about all those country roads like that, and they are extremely narrow, and it's dangerous.
And that's not only just for the fire trucks. But EMS, Mike, I'd like for us to check on EMS, and I wish Virgil, I'd said something to Virgil, but I'd like to see the sheriff department make sure that everybody's got that training.
Well, now I know for a fact because I do in-service with the sheriff's office, and every time they do in-service every year, they have EVOC training. That's part of their in-service that they do.
Yeah.
So they do.
I just don't want something to jump back up and snag one of those chiefs when something was to happen.
I feel confident. I feel
or-
confident they are, but we will check and.
I feel confident they are too, but I just want to make sure.
We'll emphasize that. Like I say, me and the mayor, the deputy mayor, looking at a different set of standards, and a lot of this stuff can be. We're looking at a lot of this stuff that we're going to revisit. You might say.
Well, one last thing I want to say too, John Engel is an excellent chief out there at Kittrell. And, you know, you don't ever see Kittrell late on any of these reports that are due out there. If they weren't notified that there was something they were supposed to have, or something didn't get there because of a faulty email or something like that. But, you know, these guys dot their I's and they cross their T's and they make sure it's done right. And they want to train well, and they do.
Right.
Go back and look at your training hours, what departments are doing the training. You're going to find that Kittrell's one of the higher training.
But then again, I'm not trying to single anybody out. When that happened, I guess my old assistant fire chief
Understand.
kicked in.
You want to know. I mean,
that was the first thing I wanted to know. Oh Lord, I hope and pray that everybody's got their,
Well, I mean, these are family and friends to us.
Right.
I mean, it's my community. You know, we care about these guys. They're taking care of us, so we
Right.
definitely want to take care of them.
All
right, year to date, the total number of calls that we've ran our department this year is 543 calls. The total for this month was 85 calls. And then on the MVA report, there was actually 44 MVA responses. The average response time was 9.3 minutes. And we did, one incident I know of that, according to the report, had live flighted out, and then we had a fatality on the 15th of June. And then the next sheet is the water usage and training hours. And if you'll notice down there, the total, of course, I didn't get a report from 17 this month. I contacted him today and he told me to get me one. But there was, so far, a total this year is 1,839 calls. And last year, this is June, last year we ran a little bit over countywide 2,100 calls.
Hey, I tell you what,
So
I guess taking it for Chief Engel, with everything he had going on this past
Yeah,
I can understand
yeah,
not getting that in.
I understand that. And we took it up, about it.
Yeah.
But we're at 1,800 calls this year. We had a little bit over 2,100 calls, so it looks like we'll more than well pass that this year. The next sheet is the May report that we turn into the County Codes Department for structures that were damaged, that would be requiring a rebuild certificate or permit. And that's my report.
Any questions on the report?
I'd like to commend Walter Hill. They came out last night actually on our VBS cook-off. Our theme is firefighters, and they brought the trucks out and were very professional and had a good time with them. So just want to say thank you to them.
We also, tonight is the final night of our rookie school. We started out with 30 students. We're graduating 20. And Saturday, that Walt Hill brought their ladder truck out, and they all climbed to the top of it as part of their practical. And they're doing their hands-on practicals tonight and their written exams. Once that is complete, they'll go through a whole week of extrication. And then once that's complete, then we're starting an EMR class, first responder class, for all of our volunteers.
How many of them are outside, like another volunteer departments?
Well, we started out with quite a few from other departments, but some of them have fell out. And I think we've got 2 from Kittrell and 2 from Walt Hill, and then the rest are Rutherford County.
What do they do when they get to the top of that ladder?
They lock in, and then they climb back down it.
They don't have to jump in a little swimming pool or anything?
No, no, heavens forbid that. No, they it's just to kind of see if they're got fear of heights.
Yeah. I would imagine all of them have a little bit of one the first time they go up there.
Every one of them scurried right up it and then didn't hesitate, so.
Good.
I move that we approve this report.
All right, we got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Got a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Thank you. All right, so we got the sheriff. And is there any other business come before the committee?
We're not having a meeting next month, or is it only gonna be one if there's, somebody's got?
We usually have one in July because getting ready, I guess, for the August public safety meeting. So it's being that we're at the end of the month, we've always had one, the way we've done it in years past.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Now we know for sure.
I was telling them earlier, my last county commission meeting as far as on chairman of public safety is gonna be on my 57th birthday. So I'll get
You're
to,
just a youngster.
I'll get to spend
Right,
my
Jeff?
birthday up here with y'all on my last meeting. All right. Well, no other business, we stand adjourned.